Annie, please forgive me. Oh well. La 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 la. Diane Keaton has died. She was 79 years old. It was quiet when Diane Keaton died. She was a star who used to make Hollywood bow its head. But behind that calmness were her last days, which were full of chaos and mystery. One after another, her homes were put on the market. Her plans were erased from the system. She skipped all public events and didn't say anything to explain herself. The reporters asked the same question: what had really happened? People who used to be close to her didn't say anything. The last bits of information showed that Diane Keaton's death was not an easy one. Also, the whole truth will be shown in this movie. As of 2023, Diane Keaton had stopped being seen in public. People who knew her said she was still happy, but she was silent. In April, she showed up at a charity event in Los Angeles, which was one of the few times she did so. Diane walked slowly, wore a white suit, and smiled barely, but her face looked like it was gone. That picture was taken as a quiet ending to the story of a woman who used to be the center of attention in Hollywood. A mystery. After all, we did see the mystery once. Don't forget that it was the noises in the attic that proved the crime. The news media made guesses about Diane's health getting worse, but she didn't say anything. She did not say anything in support of or against it. By the end of 2024, Diane was hardly ever seen in movies. Her rep said no to all of the invitations to talk shows and award ceremonies. A former coworker remembered that Diane was in the crowd at a memorial event for an actress who had died. The movie collage didn't have her name on it. She just smiled. They said something and then left before the service was over. That story got around the business as proof of how Hollywood has forgotten about the people who helped it become huge. Diane spent most of her time at home reading old scripts again, taking care of her yard, and meeting up with a few close friends every once in a while. The maid said she often talked to herself in her study late at night, and she would sometimes say her mother's name over and over again. At night, she would walk around the house and mumble, "I can't sleep in the dark." This made every light on. No one was sure if it was sleepiness or a real fear of the dark. A neighbor once said that the lights in Diane's living room were on for 3 nights in a row, even though she never left the house. When her family asked, she just said, "My mother is still here tonight." Diane put her Spanish Revival-style Brentwood mansion on the market in March 2025. She had personally repaired the house and saw it as an extension of herself. Real estate agents agreed that the price of $8.2 million was fair, but her fans were upset about the sell. After a month, Diane shared an Instagram picture of her beloved dog with the simple message, "Still here." It was her last post. After a few weeks, people who knew her said she locked one room in her house and told everyone they couldn't get in. When her daughter opened it after she died, she saw reels of film that hadn't been developed, highly marked scripts, and a framed picture of Annie Hall in the middle of the wall. Her representative also stated that Diane did not have a new serious illness and was only still getting treatment for the skin cancer she had before. But a friend said she stopped going to therapy earlier that year because she felt like she could no longer try. Diane put another property on the market in May for $28.9 million, but 2 weeks before she died, she suddenly pulled out of the deal. One of her close friends said she wanted to clean up for her kids. Several handmade letters that hadn't been sent were found in her drawer. It said, "I used to think work could save me. It didn't." Amy Keaton died in California on October 11, 2025. She was 79 years old. The family's news release was short and didn't say what caused the death. There were not many close friends at the funeral. Dexter, her oldest daughter, was supposed to come back but couldn't. The death of Diane was announced almost a day late. As soon as the story got out, news sites flooded the internet with Annie Hall photos, quotes, and clips. Some studios put out memory editions again before the funeral was over. In just 2 days, DVD sales went up by more than 200%. A lot of people realized that Diane had been commercialized after she died, which was something she had fought against her whole life. As a child, Ellen DeGeneres wrote, "Diane Keaton was an icon and hero of mine." Keanu Reeves said she knew more than anyone else about being quiet. Diane knew exactly who she was and what she wanted in life, according to Nancy Myers, who worked with her for a long time. Her old friend Woody Allen wrote, "Diane was the only one who could turn silence into art." Diane never tried to hide her bad luck. There was just a part of them that she decided to keep for herself. That's where the truth lives, in silence. And it's just that silence that makes Diane Keaton's last story scarier than any part she's ever had. Diane was the center of a restless age before she went into quiet solitude. In the beginning of her work, Diane came to Hollywood a little shy. That one trait made her a new symbol of American movies. That was the start of her long trip to fame, creativity, and irony. Stars shined across Hollywood in the middle of the 1960s. Hollywood was slowly coming out of its classical era. In 1966, Diane Keaton got her first part on Broadway in Hair. She was around 20 years old. Then she was brown-haired, bright-eyed, and very different from everyone else. Other actresses of her time tried to stand out by being flawlessly beautiful, but stuck out for her natural charm and sense of fun. After 2 years, Diane met Woody Allen at the Play It Again Sam tryouts. That meeting set the stage for a creative partnership that would last for more than 50 years. It was already known that Woody wrote funny things, but Diane had never been on stage before. He was quickly drawn to the young woman's strange magnetic energy. She wasn't afraid of making mistakes, wasn't afraid to be silly, and wasn't afraid to break the rules of normal conversation. They were connected in more ways than one. There were two creative forces coming together. Diane once said, "Woody taught me that there is only one honest way to act." Diane started to get the attention of big directors in the early 1970s. Francis Ford Coppola cast her as Kay Adams in The Godfather in 1972. When the movie first came out, Kay, the smart woman who was stuck in the shadow of Michael Corleone's power, became a figure for women who were torn between old and new ways of life. It was the first time Diane was taken seriously as a movie actor, and she stopped being known as Woody Allen's girlfriend. She worked with Woody Allen again that same year in the movie version of Play It Again, Sam, which was the first in a famous series of projects they did together. Diane brought her trademark wit and sensitivity to the role of Linda Christie, making her a new type of romantic comedy heroine who was free-spirited, smart, and sweetly flawed. This is when reviewers started to call her intelligent femininity, which was unusual in 1970s Hollywood, where traditional sensuality was still popular. Between 1972 and 1977, he was always in Woody Allen movies, like Sleeper and Love and Death. People saw them as a loving and creative pair, and the press called them the mind of New York and the heart of Hollywood. They were deeply in love with each other and had a single vision for modern movies that brought together intelligence and feeling. Annie Hall, a movie Woody wrote just for Diane based on her real life, was their best work, coming out in 1977. Diane was herself in everything, from the loose-fitting clothes to the white shirts and black ties to the hesitant smile and halting laughs. It didn't matter if it was a small Broadway theater or the Oscars. Diane Keaton made a woman look like she was both soft and strong, tender and determined. During a time of change, when American movies were looking for their own voice again, Diane became that voice that no one else had. She was unique, real, and impossible to replace. After Annie Hall, the woman who broke the mold, Diane Keaton didn't want to play it safe. She kept pushing herself by taking on parts that went against what people thought she should do. For example, in Reds, she became Louise Bryant, a woman involved in politics and her own struggles who wasn't just a lover or support character. Diane had to deal with months of hard work, crazy weather, and mental stress while shooting Reds. A lot of weight was taken off of her. And even thought about leaving the show. Many critics saw her as a much more complex and deep actress after that part. During the 1980s, she kept picking unique projects like Baby Boom, which is about a wealthy woman who becomes a mother by accident when she inherits a baby. Diane had to juggle her career goals with her family duties. She had to play a strong woman without falling into a stereotype. Baby Boom made $26 million, which was more than its budget. Over time, she became an example for women who are trying to balance their personal identity with what society expects of them. Nicole played the lead in Father of the Bride in the early 1990s and again in the 1995 follow-up. These movies made her a lot of money and brought her back into contact with regular people. To focus more on directing, she started to take a break from lead parts around the same time. First with Heaven and then Unstrung Heroes. Diane wanted to make art her own way instead of following trends, and these small projects showed that. Diane loved design and photography just as much as she loved making movies. She once said, "Right now the art of architecture is so exciting." That quote from an interview showed how obsessed she was becoming. Diane started buying old homes in Beverly Hills and Los Angeles and fixing them up herself, including planning the changes and making them look nice. She kept the brick walls and used old wooden doors again. She never cleaned anything new, so light could get in through the cracks and time could leave its mark. A lot of journalists said that her houses were like self-portraits because they were simple, elegant, and full of history. Of course, this road often didn't fit with what Hollywood wanted. One producer said Diane was hard to predict because she often turned down commercial endorsements and parts that were too similar to others. She once refused to dress up in outfits that were too revealing in order to get more people to buy tickets. Some people thought she was dropping out of the big game, but she knew she was being herself and not trying to fit in. Around the end of the 1990s, Diane co-starred with Meryl Streep in Marvin's Room, a family story about illness and death. Her part was small, but it was important to the story, and it won her a fourth Oscar nomination. Many of Diane's co-stars started to fade away, and she started a new story where love, age, and freedom all came together in one frame. Diane hadn't changed, but Hollywood had. As she went along her own road, she turned middle age into a new source of power on screen. A big step forward in movies. Diane Keaton reached one of the most important points in her work when Something's Gotta Give came out in 2003, when she was 57 years old. Diane played smart, successful author Erica Berry, who was independent and wouldn't let love define her. She starred with Jack Nicholson and Keanu Reeves. With over $266 million in ticket sales around the world, the movie proved that Diane could still lead a big motion picture well after the age when Hollywood usually turns its back on her. Diane was back in the spotlight after the success of Something's Gotta Give. This led to a number of new parts with a wider range of emotions in Because I Said. So she played a mother who was so protective of her daughter that she was smothering her. It was both funny and a deep reflection of an older woman's worries about how generations are changing. Diane then played experienced news anchor Colleen Peck in Morning Glory. Peck was a woman who had been successful in the past but is now having a hard time keeping up with a younger, faster-paced world. Diane gave an honest answer when asked why she had decided not to get married. "For a while you think you have to have someone to be fulfilled. I don't feel that way anymore." The statement caused a lot of debate, but in the end it was seen as the culmination of her lifelong refusal to follow the rules. Diane was never afraid to talk about being single. She never made it into a platform. She just lived her truth as a woman who was free, happy, and sure of herself. She didn't need love to prove her worth. But beneath that confidence were deep sadness that only close friends and family knew about. Diane had to deal with the death of her mother in the early 2000s. She called her mother the source of all my creative feelings. Because of that loss, she took a break from public life for a while and wrote her biography and the photography book Clown Paintings. After that, she wrote a book with several parts about the connection between memory creativity and the fear of losing oneself. People should not remember her work, she wrote. Instead, it was meant to show that I still live in a world that is always changing. Diane kept giving people ideas about clothes. In culture columns, her white shirts, wide-leg pants, bowler hats, and broad belts became a must-see. She made her own style, which is a mix of femininity and androgyny, softness and strength, based on the standard Annie Hall look. Susan Morrison, a critic, once said that Diane Keaton made fashion for women over 50 so they could look brave instead of young. Diane started to look back after decades of hard work, but not with sorrow. Instead, she felt acceptance. Many of her peers went out of the public eye, but she came back with a voice that was softer, slower, and more true than ever. And it was during these years that didn't seem to be busy that Diane started to tell Hollywood her darkest secrets. Too late to say sorry. Diane walked out on stage in a white suit at the 2017 AFI Life Achievement Awards. Her silver hair sparkled in the lights. She said, "I'm so lucky to be here tonight," with a little shaking in her voice. "Thanks a lot, Woody." It was a short sentence that sounded like the last line of a long book. It was both a thank you and a quiet way to let go. Diane and Woody Allen had been working together as artists for more than 50 years. They were glad to see the relationship end and didn't feel bad about it. In an interview with People 2 years later, Diane talked about how she became a mother late in life. After years of only working on movie sets, she talked about the process of adopting Dexter and Duke. These two kids helped her get back into a normal routine. With my women friends, I really like their sense of humor, she said in the same interview. I miss my mom. Diane didn't talk about work much after she turned 70. Instead, she talked about loss and relationship as if they were normal parts of life. Diane said this on the Dr. Oz show. I wonder how she could go from being so hidden to being so real and open. It was clear that she was talking to herself, the woman who had an eating problem as a child and had hidden it for years. She had said somewhere else that I learned how to hide very well. Diane had bulimia in the 1970s, which made her feel exhausted and obsessed at the same time. After many years, she finally told everyone about it. She had been taking care of her illness for a long time, and the memory taught her to enjoy every day she was healthy. In an interview the following year, Diane said, to feel the world, to explore, to be with people, to take things far, to risk, to love. These few words summed up the way of life she followed in her later years, to live fully, to dare to feel, and to love. Even if it's only for a short time. Diane's calmness came from a long time of therapy where she learned to be patient and forgive herself again. She talked about how adopting her kids and going to therapy had made her feel better and less angry about the past. Even though the media was watching, Diane kept up a steady work pace. She was in the movie book club, which starred seasoned actors like Jane Fonda. There is Mary Steenburgen and Candice Bergen. Diane's character, Carol, was a lot like her in real life, free, funny, smart, and not afraid to start dating again, even when she was older. A lot of people saw the movie and paid more than $100 million for it. The press called it a safe comeback. Diane's glow at this time didn't come from prizes or box office numbers, but from peace. She decided to step away from the noise after decades of living by Hollywood's strict rules, but she will always be remembered by her fans. She just smiled and said, I didn't miss anything when asked if she felt bad about anything. There were some things I didn't need but did want. Diane's impact isn't the Oscars or other awards she won, it's how she lived her life in a world that doesn't often accept honesty. She lived, spoke slowly, and let her deeds do the talking. Diane Keaton was a figure beyond words, and her quiet voice can still be heard far away, even when the lights went down and the stage door closed. Write your thoughts in the space below if Diane Keaton's story makes you think about courage, getting older, or how we learn to live honestly. What do you think about her decision to be quiet in a noisy world? It's important that you like, follow, and turn on the bell so that you don't miss our next movie stories.